Hey everyone, Shane here with etrailer.com. Today I have a 2021 Ram 2500. I'm going to walk through how to install Curt's custom above bed rail kit. This is what the rail kit's going to look like when it's installed. It is going to come with custom brackets that are not going to require any drilling into the frame. The only drilling we're going to have to do are the bolts going down through the bed to hold our rails in place to those frame brackets. The rails are going to be industry standard, which means they're going to have 3 different slots for different size hitches. Let's say you have an older truck, you already have a setup in it, but you want to keep the hitch head because you're going to sell the truck. You obviously don't want to take the rails out of that truck, but your new truck doesn't have it in it. So you want to get rails, be able to use the same head you already have. As long as the rails are industry standard, as long as your hitch head's industry standard, any rails are going to work for you. So when you compare these rails to some of the other styles, like for instance BMWs, the Curts are actually going to sit lower than any other one. Which means they're not going to stick up off the bed. With that being said, that means you're going to have a lot easier time, or it's going to be a lot less intrusive when you're trying to slide maybe plywood or drywall or anything else in your bed. With some of the other ones, because they sit up a little bit higher, sometimes those things can get caught on your rails and it becomes an issue. There's going to be a couple different types of paint. You're going to have the gloss black finish and you're going to have the carbide finish, what we have here. In my opinion, the carbide finish is a much better option. It's going to hold up a lot better. It seems like the gloss black powder coat finish seems to chip off a little bit easier, where this being carbide, it's a lot tougher. It's going to hold up a lot longer. As far as the installation process on this, the hardest part is going to be this front driver's side because the fuel tank runs right in there. So that's where the long extensions are going to come in place. That's going to help you get the nuts on the bottom side installed. As for the rest of it, everything's pretty open. It's pretty easy to get to. I will recommend cleaning out the weld nuts that are in the frame rails because they're not capped off. They are open to the weather. Make sure you clean them out well because you don't want your bolts to cross thread. If it's not something you have the space to do or the time to do, you can always check out our dealer locator and find someone near you that's capable of putting it in. If it is something you're willing to tackle, follow along and I'll walk through how to do it now. Start your installation. It may make it a little bit easier if you go ahead and remove your spare tire and your heat shield. Heat shield is just going to have some 10mm bolts on the front side of the shield and then 2 up on this rail on the back side of it. On our driver's side, in between the fuel tank and the frame rail, you're going to see some lines here. We need to get some of these out of the way so we can mount our frame bracket. We're going to be taking our wiring here. We're going to pop this clip out, that'll loosen our wiring, and then these 2 vacuum lines that are above it. Let's take the trim panel tool, pop that out. And then the other 2 should have clips as well on the back side. So with these loose, this will give us enough space to slide our front bracket up into place here. We'll start with our bracket on our passenger side. It's going to look like this. These are going to face towards the inside. This part is going to face towards the front of the vehicle. You're going to need a longer bolt, hex bolt with a conical tooth washer, this large block, and then a shorter hex bolt with a conical tooth washer. On our passenger side, we're going to come up to the inside of our frame rail. In front of our spring, you're going to see 2 threaded holes. These are the 2 holes we're going to be using. What they don't say in the instructions is you possibly could have this wiring right up on the frame rail. Right back here in the back, we're going to have to pop that off so that our frame bracket will actually slide behind it. We're going to take our bracket, slide it up like that. Take the shorter of our bolts. It's going to go in this back hole. the longer of our tool, two. There we go, up in the front hole. And make sure the teeth are facing towards the hitch on all of them. We're going to take this block, we're going to slide it up in between the frame rail and the back of the bracket. Line up the hole, and then we'll thread this into our frame. I'm going to take a 19mm socket, and we're just going to tighten these down a little bit so it holds the frame rail, I'm sorry, the bracket up against the frame rail and it doesn't move around on us. Once we get everything else installed, we'll come back and torque them at a later time. Next thing we're going to do is once you have your front brackets secured to the frame rail and up as tight as you can get them to the bed, we're going to take a punch. And we're going to center it in this hole and this hole. From the bottom, we're going to put a little divot in there. And then we're going to drill an 1/8 inch hole. Next, we're going to use the dimples that we put in the bottom of the bed to center our drill bit. We're going to use a small drill bit, 1/8 inch, and drill a pilot hole up through the bed. Once we get our pilot holes drilled, we're going to go up top, set our rail in place, and we're going to get our holes opened up to the correct size from the top side. Once you get your pilot holes drilled, we're going to bring our bracket up here, set it in place, make sure it's lining up with the holes correctly. Make sure we're going straight. And we can slide this out of the way. We're going to take a step bit and we're going to open our holes up to 9/16. Once you get your holes opened up to the correct size, vacuum that up, and then you're going to take some kind of paint, black paint, clear, and cover that bare metal to help prevent any rusting and corrosion later on. So once you've got your 4 holes painted, go ahead and drop your bolts down into the holes. And what you're going to do is you're going to use your bracket to mark this center back hole. I'm sorry, center forward hole towards the cab of the truck. We're going to drill a pilot hole down through it. We're going to move our bracket and then we're going to open up like we did the other ones. So once you get your center hole drilled out, we can come back and reinstall our hardware. This time we're going to put it in, we're going to leave it in. We're going to need these spacers here. That's because our hole is in the lower part of the corrugation from the top of the bed. This is going to help prevent the bed from smashing down. Put that on, get our bolt in place, and we'll repeat that on all the holes on this rail. Then we're going to come underneath and we're going to take a spacer block like this and a flange nut. We're going to put it on the bolts that are coming down from our brackets. For our back one, the spacer block is going to look like this. Once you get the spacer block and nut put on, we can lightly tighten it down, but we want to make sure we're leaving our hardware a little loose. So we can go back in our bed, get our base for our fifth wheel set in place to line up for our back bracket. With our front rear rail, all the hardware in place, we're going to take the base for our fifth wheel, set it into our front bracket. We're going to use it to line up our back bracket. So what we're going to do, we're going to measure center of the bracket here to the center of this one. We want to make sure we're at 22 inches. For our back rail, with our back rail in place, we're going to come to the inside here, second hole in, drill a pilot hole. Next one, for our back, the very back line or row, we're going to do this fourth one in, we're going to do this center one, and then we're going to do the fourth one in from the edge on the driver's side. So now I'm going to take my step bit, do the same thing we did on the front. I'm going to open up all the holes except for this one here on the driver's side. This one we're going to hold off on because we have to go through a hat channel. We're going to use a longer drill bit to get it to go all the way through the hat channel first. Then we can open up the top and then go underneath and open up the bottom. Drilled all the way out through the bottom of the hat channel. We can go ahead and open the top to the size that we need. Clean your shavings up, and again, make sure you spray those holes with some black paint or some kind of paint. Take your remaining spacer blocks, anywhere, just like we did on the front rail, anywhere on the back where the rail sits above the bed, you need to slide this in there before you put the bolt in place. You're going to get a short carriage bolt, just like we put on the front, short ones for the back 3 holes. For the one on our passenger side in the middle, you're going to have a threaded hex head bolt like this with this nut plate. Make sure you got the right bolt. It should thread into there. That is going to go into that front corner. This eventually will go in the hat channel, and we'll thread that bolt into this. For this one on the driver's side, middle one, you're going to have a long carriage bolt. Before we get this in place, we need to go down and we need to open the hole in the bottom of the hat channel so that this will slide in. Then we got a spacer that we're going to slide in so it doesn't crush the hat channel when we tighten this down. And now we need to take our step bit. This is a hole in our hat channel. We're going to make it big enough that this sleeve will slide up in there. And again, what that's going to do is when we tighten it down, it's going to keep from crushing the hat channel. Once you get it opened up, you can slide that sleeve in there. We'll go up top, drop our bolt down, slide our sleeve on, and we'll put on our bracket. We'll take our passenger side bracket, 2 bolts, kind of through the washer. Slide it up, over the bolt, and these are going to go into the frame rail. Again, we're just going to loosely install these right now because we're going to tighten it against our bed first. For this one, put on a spacer block with the flange nut. We'll tighten this one first, and then we'll come back and we'll tighten these 2. We'll take our driver's side bracket, get it kind of resting in place here for now. We need to take our sleeve and stick it up in that hole. Same thing on this side. Hex bolt, conical tooth washer, threads into the frame rail. Spacer block here. Flange nut. Same thing here. Spacer block. Flange nut. Once we get all our hardware in place, we'll come back and tighten everything. Again, start with these up here on top, pull the bracket up to the bed, and then come back and tighten these on the side. For our middle one, spacer block, flange nut. So now for our last one we need to put in, it's going to be the nut plate that's going to go on the hatch channel on the passenger side. You're going to need a second person because somebody's going to have to be on top, threading it into the nut plate while you're down on the bottom holding it, or vice versa. You are going to need a conical tooth washer on the top side under that bolt head. So make sure you take one with you when you give it to whoever's going to be up there. So now with our extra set of hands on top, we'll have them start threading it into our nut plate. Once it's started, you can come back up top and you can tighten it down. Once you have all your hardware installed, next we're going to go through and we're going to torque it. There's a sequence you need to torque it in. All of your bolts that are running up through the bed, we're going to torque all of those first, and we're going to come back and we're going to torque the bolts going into the frame rails second. And make sure you torque those to the specifications and the instructions because they are different. Once you have everything torqued down, you can go ahead and reinstall your heat shield and your spare tire, and you're ready to go. It's going to do it for a look at an installation of the Curt above bed rail kit on a 2021 Ram 2500.